Hello, everyone. Now, as you know, Michael Jordan fans are the worst sports fans of all time. And one of the many reasons why is because these people really believe that the reason that the Chicago Bulls lost to the Orlando Magic in the 1995 NBA playoffs is because Michael Jordan was rusty. Now, I am going to explain to you why this is ridiculous. Here are the reasons why in no particular order. First, they are disrespecting all of the other NBA people. Next, they are dismissing all of the other NBA people. Next, when they claim to respect the game and then they disrespect the game, they are contradicting themselves. Next, when they claim to love the game and then they dismiss the game, they are contradicting themselves. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a history of always trying to find a way to make Michael Jordan the #1 NBA player of all time. So that right there shows you that they're not reliable. Next, understand why Michael Jordan fans are saying this. It's because they're just trying to find a way to make Michael Jordan the #1 NBA player of all time. So that right there shows you that they're not reliable. Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the players that Michael Jordan played with don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the players that Michael Jordan played against don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the owners, general managers, coaches, and other NBA people that Michael Jordan played for don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of NBA Hall of Famers, lots of NBA legends, lots of NBA scouts, and lots of NBA experts don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that Michael Jordan doesn't agree with them? Next, since lots of these people don't agree with them, why do Michael Jordan fans sometimes reference one or more of these people for one or more topics? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that usually the only people who think this are Michael Jordan fans? Next, if some non-Michael Jordan fan said this thing and it went against Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan fans wouldn't agree with that non-Michael Jordan fan. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They always ask people who disagree with them if they were there when Michael Jordan played, if they went to his games, if they saw his games live on TV, and so on. And yet, they don't ask themselves these same type of questions when it comes to lots of other NBA Hall of Famers. If they did, they would know that it would go against them, and they wouldn't come to this kind of conclusion. Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for some other NBA players? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for some other players who played other sports? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for some other people and some other things when it comes to other things outside of sports? Next, a player can dominate this game, be above average, or anything else, whether they are rusty or not. Next, I want you to think about something logical. Is it logical to assume that the reason that the Chicago Bulls lost to the Orlando Magic in the 1995 NBA playoffs is because Michael Jordan was rusty? Next, I want you to use some common sense. No one has ever said that a basketball star's whole game was rusty. Next, there has never been any large amount of NBA fans who said that an NBA star was rusty after so many practice games. Next, there has never been any large amount of NBA fans who said that an NBA star was rusty after so many regular season games. Next, there has never been any large amount of NBA fans who said that an NBA star was rusty after so many playoff games. Next, there has never been any large amount of NBA fans who said that an NBA star was rusty after 2 of these things. Next, there has never been any large amount of NBA fans who said that an NBA star was rusty after all 3 of these things. Next, and even if one or more of these things did happen, it's rare. Next, and even if one or more of these things did happen, it doesn't mean that they're right. Next, no one ever said a basketball star was rusty when they had nice statistics. Next, Next. It may not even happen if the star was not healthy. Next. Or was a rookie. Next. Or was younger. Next. Had less experience. Next. And it would less likely happen to a star who was healthy. Next. And who was not a rookie. Next. And who was older. Next. And who had more experience. Next. No one has ever said that an entire playoff series was lost because of an NBA star. Next. And it is even less likely that they would say that the reason it was on the star was because the star was rusty. Next. And if they were to point the finger at the star, it is even less likely that they would do it in a way where they are not actually blaming the star, but giving the star a pass. Next. It would even less likely happen with Michael Jordan. Next. It would happen less likely with the person who is labeled as the number one NBA player in the league. Next. And it would happen less likely with the person who is labeled as the number one NBA player of all time. Next. And even if it did happen one or more times, it's rare. Next. And even if it did happen one or more times, it doesn't mean that they're right. Next. And you can apply all these things to other sports stars of other professional team sports. Next. And you can apply most of these things to lots of other people and lots of other things outside of sports. Next. So do you really believe that it happened for the first time to Michael Jordan? Or if you think it has happened in the past, do you really believe it happened as one of the few times to Michael Jordan? Next. What is more likely, that he was rusty or that Michael Jordan fans just made it up? Next. Is the guy that Michael Jordan fans label as the number one NBA player in the league supposed to be rusty? Next. And if so, is he supposed to be rusty for so long? Next. Is the guy that Michael Jordan fans label as the number one NBA player of all time supposed to be rusty? Next. And if so, is he supposed to be rusty for so long? Next. Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. In 1995, most Michael Jordan fans did not act like the Chicago Bulls lost to the Orlando Magic because Michael Jordan was rusty. This became more of a thing as time passed. Next. Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. When Michael Jordan played that year, there were Michael Jordan fans who made it seem like Michael Jordan was doing so well that he was the number one player in the league. Next. And that it was like he never left. Next. And that it was impressive because he hadn't been in the NBA for a while. Next. And how he was doing so well even though he had only been in a few games. Next. And they made it seem like all these things are examples of why he is the number one NBA player in the league. Next. And why he is the number one NBA player of all time. Next. Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. On the one hand, they act like one guy wins and one guy loses, and they act like Michael Jordan won by himself. But if the Chicago Bulls can win when Michael Jordan was rusty, then it makes no sense when they act like one guy wins and one guy loses. And it makes no sense when they act like Michael Jordan won by himself. Next. I want you to think about something. What if another star did what Michael Jordan did? What if they came back purposely late into the season? What do you think Michael Jordan fans would have done? They would have held it against the star. They would have explained that the star purposely came back late in the season so that he could be fresher, and so that he would have an advantage, and so that he would have less games, and so that he would have more of a chance to win. They would have pointed the finger at the star. Next. They would have used it as an example of why that star is not as good as Michael Jordan. Next. They would have explained that Michael Jordan played in tougher situations. Next. And he won. Next. And that he would have never done what the star did. Next. And that if he did do what the star did, he would have had an easier time winning. Next. And here's something else for you to think about. What if another star did what Michael Jordan did and then won the series? What do you think Michael Jordan fans would have done? They would have done the same things I just explained, except now they would not count the win. They would put an asterisk next to it. Next. And here's something else for you to think about. What if another star did what Michael Jordan did and then won the series and then won the ring? What do you think Michael Jordan fans would have done? They would have done the same things I just explained, except now they would not count the ring. They would put an asterisk next to it. Next. And here's something else for you to think about. What if another star did what Michael Jordan did and they lost that series? What do you think Michael Jordan fans would have done? They would have done the same things I just explained, except now they would make fun of the star. They would explain how the star tried to come back earlier to have an advantage, and he still lost. Next, I want you to think about something. The NBA has a preseason, partly so that some players can get practice, and the preseason is not that long. Next. And some players want a shorter preseason. So obviously, lots of players don't think that they need that much time and that many games. So it makes no sense to think that Michael Jordan needs more time and needs more games. Next, Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. Most Michael Jordan fans want less preseason games, so they don't think that players need that much time or that many games to get back into things. So when they think that Michael Jordan needs more time and needs more games, that is a contradiction. Unless they think Michael Jordan is one of those players who needs more time and needs more games. Next, you need to understand that 1995 is not the only year that Michael Jordan fans give Michael Jordan a pass for losing. They do this for every year that he lost. This is important to understand because it shows you a pattern with these people. If they just gave him a pass for losing in 1995, it would still be strange. But it is even more strange when they do this for every year that he lost. Next, you also need to understand that they only give Michael Jordan a pass for losing. This is important to understand because it shows you a pattern with these people. If they gave all the NBA stars a pass for losing, it would still be strange. But when they only give Michael Jordan a pass for losing, it is even more strange. Next, Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. If the Chicago Bulls would have won, what do you think Michael Jordan fans would have done? They would have given Michael Jordan credit for winning. They would have added it to the list of why they rank Michael Jordan as the #1 NBA player of all time. Next, Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. If Michael Jordan had won, not only would they give him credit, they would use it to elevate him. They would say things like, he retired, came back, and he won. Or he retired and did not play for a long time, and he came back and he won. Or he did not have that much practice and he won. Or he did not play that much with his teammates and he won. Or he did not play that many regular season games and he won. Or he had some new teammates and he won. Or his team was not that good and he won. Or he was rusty and he won. Next, if Michael Jordan was rusty, his teammates can still do things to help the team win. Next, when Michael Jordan fans say that Michael Jordan was rusty, they are usually referring to him scoring points. Next, now let's assume Michael Jordan was rusty. It doesn't mean he can't help his team win. He can still do other things to help his team win. Next, there are lots of examples of players who are hurt and they are not the same and they can't do some things as well as they could when they are healthy, but they still play to try to help their team win in another way. Next, here is Michael Jordan who is healthy. Next, and who took a break from the NBA. Next, and who played in a good amount of games. And Michael Jordan fans think that he can't help his team win in another way. Next, Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. They love to act like Michael Jordan was an all-around player. Next, love to point out that he was more than just a scorer. Next, and they will point out the other things that he did. Next, and they will tell you that he was the perfect player. Next, and he had no weakness. Next, and he was dominant on both offense and defense. Next, and if he wanted to, he could have had better statistics in other areas. Next, and he won because he was an all-around player. Next, and some of them think he was the #1 all-around player. And yet they say he's rusty. Next. Okay, so if he is rusty when it comes to scoring, then he could have done other things to help his team win. But they don't say that. They just focused on him supposedly being rusty on scoring. That is a contradiction. Next. And then they say he's rusty. Next. Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. Sometimes they'll say things like, well, the reason another star lost is because he didn't do something or he didn't do some things to help his team win. And they're very vague about this. And sometimes they don't really go into detail about it. They just say a general thing, but they don't do this kind of thing with Michael Jordan when he lost. Next. Now I want you to think logically about some other things. Think about some people who are good at something that has nothing to do with sports. And imagine that they have not done that thing for a while. Most of them don't need time to get back into things. Next. Now think about some sports players who are good at some sports. And imagine if they have not played their sports for a while. Most of them do not need time or games to get back into things. Next. This is even more true with professional sports players. Next. This is even more true with stars. Next. This is even more true with people who are considered as the #1 player in their sport. Next. And this is even more true with players who are considered as the #1 player of all time in their sport. So do you really believe that Michael Jordan needed more time and more games? Next. Now some Michael Jordan fans will say, yes, some people need time or games to get back into things. Okay, that is true. So let's try this again. Think about all the people that I just listed. If any of them needed more time or more games, they don't all need that much time or that many games. If a person is good at what they do, they do not need that much time at all. If a player is good at their sport, they do not need that much time and that many games at all.
Next.
And if some sports players need more time or need more games, how much time and how many games do you think they need? Most of them can get back into things real fast. Most players can get back into things after like one play, or after a few plays, or after a few minutes, or after a quarter, or after 2 quarters, or after 3 quarters, or after 4 quarters, or after one game, or after a few games. So why would Michael Jordan need more time and need more games?
Next.
I want you to think about something else. Think about all the people I wrote about. Most of them would know if they might be rusty or not. They would know what they need to get back into things. They would know how much time they need. They know what to do to get the job done. So do you think Michael Jordan would be so different?
Next.
I want you to think about something else. Think of all the people I listed. Lots of them might have advisors. The advisors tell them what is a good idea, what can happen, what they might need, and things like that. So do you think Michael Jordan had advisors that were not that good?
Next.
What if Michael Jordan was rusty? That means most likely he is either not that smart, or he is dumb, or he did not care, or he just made some mistakes. Either way, Michael Jordan fans should not be giving him a pass. They should be questioning him. They should be holding it against him. And they should not elevate him.
Next.
In any sport, when a player does not do well, most fans will point that out. But not Michael Jordan fans. They act like he was rusty.
Next.
And they act like that is not a bad thing.
Next.
If Michael Jordan was rusty, do Michael Jordan fans know how many games he was rusty for? Like, do they think he was rusty for everything? All the practice games? All the regular season games? All the playoff games?
Next.
If Michael Jordan fans know how many games he was rusty for, how do they know?
Next.
If Michael Jordan fans don't know how many games he was rusty for, then how do they know he was rusty? They know he was rusty, but they don't know for how many games?
Next.
If Michael Jordan was rusty, how many games does he need to get back into things?
Next.
How do they know how many games he needs?
Next.
If Michael Jordan fans don't know how many games he needs, then how do they know he was rusty? They know he was rusty, but they don't know for how many games?
Next.
Was he still rusty after the last game of the playoffs in 1995? That would be strange if he was still rusty.
Next.
And if he just stopped being rusty, that would also be strange.
Next.
If he was still rusty after the last game of the playoffs, do Michael Jordan fans know how many more games he would need?
Next.
If they do know, how do they know?
Next.
If they don't know, how come they don't know? So they know he was rusty, but they don't know how many games he would need?
Next.
If Michael Jordan was rusty, why did he return to the NBA?
Next.
If Michael Jordan was rusty, why didn't he give himself more time before he returned to the NBA?
Next.
Why would the Chicago Bulls let him start in the regular season if he was rusty?
Next.
Why would the Chicago Bulls let him keep starting in the regular season if he was rusty?
Next.
Why would he let himself start in the regular season if he was rusty?
Next.
Why would he let himself keep starting in the regular season if he was rusty?
Next.
If Michael Jordan was rusty, why didn't he give himself more time before he played in the playoffs?
Next.
Why did the Chicago Bulls let him start in the playoffs?
Next.
Why did the Chicago Bulls let him keep starting in the playoffs?
Next.
Why would he let himself start in the playoffs?
Next.
Why would he let himself keep starting in the playoffs?
Next.
If Michael Jordan didn't know he would be rusty, then once he realized he was rusty, why didn't he stop playing? I mean, he wouldn't want to hurt his team, right? He would want to give someone else a chance to help his team win, right?
Next.
Once Michael Jordan knew he was rusty, if he decided to keep playing, that means he did not mind hurting his team from winning. And that means either he is not a good leader, or he is not a good team player, or he is not a smart player, or he is a selfish player.
Next.
Either way, Michael Jordan fans should not be giving Michael Jordan a pass, and they should not be elevating him.
Next.
But okay, nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. But he did not do this for one game or for a few games. According to Michael Jordan fans, he did this for lots of games. Next, Michael Jordan fans have another contradiction. They make it seem like winning is the most important thing when it comes to ranking players. And they make it seem like Michael Jordan did not care about statistics and he cared more about winning. Well then, if Michael Jordan was rusty, but he kept trying to play, and it's not because he is dumb or anything like that, then that means he cared more about his statistics, or he cared more about getting the credit, or he cared more about being part of it compared to staying out while the team tries to win, and winning a ring was not his number one goal. Next, did Michael Jordan fans ever think that maybe he purposely came back late in the season so that he could be fresher? Next, and have an advantage? Next, Michael Jordan fans did not consider something. Michael Jordan had less games, which means he was fresher, which means he has an advantage. So if he was not rusty, he has more of an advantage. Next, and if he is rusty, well, at least he is fresher. Next, if the Chicago Bulls lost because Michael Jordan was rusty, then how come the next season they made their team much better? Why not keep everyone on the team, which makes most of them happy, and save some money, and save time by not making changes, and just let Michael Jordan win them the ring the next season? Next, Michael Jordan fans love to point out how the next year the Chicago Bulls beat the Orlando Magic and they won the ring, and it was because Michael Jordan was not rusty, and that is proof that the Chicago Bulls lost the year before because Michael Jordan was rusty. This is ridiculous. The Orlando Magic were not the same. Next, the Chicago Bulls were not the same. Next, the NBA was not the same. Next, it was a new year. For example, Horace Grant was hurt on the Orlando Magic. Another example, the Chicago Bulls had Dennis Rodman. And when it comes to the rest of the NBA, they all play a role in why the Orlando Magic lost and the Chicago Bulls won. Next, if Michael Jordan did not play well, did Michael Jordan fans ever consider that maybe he just did not play well? Next, did Michael Jordan fans ever think that maybe the Chicago Bulls were not that good? Before Michael Jordan came back, their record was 34-31. Next, did Michael Jordan fans ever consider that maybe they were a good team? Before Michael Jordan came back, their record was 34-31. And now they have Michael Jordan back on their team, and he is fresh. Next, did Michael Jordan fans ever think that maybe the Orlando Magic were a better team? Next, did Michael Jordan fans ever think that the Chicago Bulls thought he was fine? Next, did Michael Jordan fans ever think that maybe Michael Jordan was not rusty? Next, one of the reasons the Chicago Bulls lost was because they did not have Horace Grant. Next, one of the reasons the Chicago Bulls lost was because Horace Grant was on the Orlando Magic. Next, so he will give the Orlando Magic an advantage partly because he knows the Chicago Bulls. Next, when the Orlando Magic won against the Chicago Bulls in that last game, the local Chicago Bulls station had Michael Jordan as the player of the game. Why would they do that if Michael Jordan was rusty? Next, when the Orlando Magic beat the Chicago Bulls in the playoffs, they were really happy. They were really celebrating. They felt like they beat a great team. Years later, Shaq even said something like how they felt like they beat the great Michael Jordan. Why would all this happen if Michael Jordan was rusty? Next, I want you to think about some things. Michael Jordan played practice games. Next, Michael Jordan played 17 games in the regular season. Next, he played 4 games in the first round of the playoffs. Next, he played 6 games in the second round of the playoffs. So do Michael Jordan fans really believe that Michael Jordan was rusty during all these games? Next, and he was still rusty after all these games? Now let's go to how the team did with Michael Jordan. Let's start with practice. Next, there is no reason to think that Michael Jordan was rusty for every practice. Next, now when it comes to all the people who were there, they don't all say that Michael Jordan was rusty for every practice. Next, and everyone who went on record basically said that Michael Jordan did fine for most of the practices. Now let's go to the regular season. Next, in the 17 games Michael Jordan played in the regular season, the Chicago Bulls won 13 games. Next, they only lost 4 times. Next, and they had a 6-game winning streak. Next, and then they had another 6-game winning streak. Next, and they never lost 2 games in a row. Next, and they made the playoffs. Next, now let's go over how the team did with Michael Jordan in the playoffs. In that first round, they won 3 out of 4 games. Next, and even though they lost in the second round, they did not get swept. Next, and it wasn't like they lost each game badly. Next, they won 2 games. The Orlando Magic won 4 games to 2. Next, and it was not like every game the Orlando Magic won was a blowout. So how did all this happen if Michael Jordan was rusty? Next, either he was not rusty or he was. Let's go over some of his regular season games, and we will focus on points since you Michael Jordan lovers love points. Next, in his second game back with the Boston Celtics, he had 27 points. Next, in his fourth game back against the Atlanta Hawks, he had 32 points. Next, in his fifth game back against the New York Knicks, he had 55 points. Next, in his 12th game back against the Detroit Pistons, he had 29 points. Next, this is not rusty, and you got a variety of games, and I did not focus on one time frame. And remember, I focused on only points. Next, let's go over some of his playoff games. And again, I will focus on points since you Michael Jordan lovers love points. In his first playoff game against the Charlotte Hornets, he had 48 points.
Next.
In his second playoff game against the Charlotte Hornets, he had 32 points.
Next.
In his sixth playoff game against the Orlando Magic, he had 38 points.
Next.
In his seventh playoff game against the Orlando Magic, he had 40 points.
Next.
This is not rusty, and you got a variety of games, and I did not focus on one time frame, and remember, I focused on only points. Next, let's go over some of his regular season statistics. He played 17 games.
Next.
He started 17 games.
Next.
He averaged 39 minutes a game.
Next.
He averaged 27 points.
Next.
He averaged 7 rebounds.
Next.
He averaged 5 assists.
Next.
He averaged 2 steals.
Next.
He averaged 1 block.
Next.
He shot 41% from the field.
Next.
He shot 50% from the three-point line.
Next.
And he shot 80% from the free throw line.
Next.
This is not rusty.
Next.
His regular season statistics are in his range of what he usually does as a player.
Next.
His regular season statistics shows that he actually played very well.
Next.
If you think this is him not having a good season, well, he had other regular seasons where he was worse than this.
Next.
If you agree that he had other regular seasons where he was worse, then that means you think he had more than one regular season where he did not do as well as you think he should have.
Next.
If that is true, then why are you making an excuse for him?
Next.
And why are you elevating him?
Next.
And why do you rank him as the number one NBA player in the NBA for one or more of those seasons?
Next.
And why are you ranking him as the number one NBA player of all time? Now, Michael Jordan fans are the kind of people who will cherry pick things. They will ignore most of Michael Jordan's regular season statistics and focus on the 41% field goal percentage. Okay, let's address that.
First.
It doesn't make sense to ignore most of his statistics
Next.
and just focus on his field goal percentage,
Next.
especially when his field goal percentage is not even that low.
Next.
Just because he has a 41% field goal percentage doesn't mean his whole game was rusty.
Next.
Just because he has a 41% field goal percentage, it doesn't mean his scoring was rusty.
Next.
There could be a million reasons why a player has a 41% field goal percentage.
Next.
He has had seasons where he shot under 50%.
Next.
His career field goal percentage is under 50%.
Next.
If he shot 41%, why not just take that as he shot 41%? Maybe he was not rusty.
Next.
If you think he did not play as well as he usually does, then maybe he did not play as well as he usually does.
Next.
One guy doesn't win and lose. So how does it make sense to act like the reason they lost was because one guy had a 41% field goal percentage?
Next.
Michael Jordan fans also have another contradiction. If they say his field goal percentage was low, and it was low because he was rusty, well, in the playoffs, it was not as low. So that means in the playoffs, he was not rusty. Now let's go over some of his playoff statistics.
Next.
He played 10 games.
Next.
He started all 10 games.
Next.
He averaged 42 minutes a game.
Next.
He averaged 32 points.
Next.
He averaged 7 rebounds.
Next.
He averaged 5 assists.
Next.
He averaged 2 steals.
Next.
He averaged 1 block.
Next.
He had a 48% field goal percentage.
Next.
He shot 37% from the three-point line.
Next.
And he shot 81% from the free throw line. This is not rusty.
Next.
His playoff statistics are in his range of what he usually does as a player.
Next.
His playoff statistics shows that he actually played very well.
Next.
So by the logic of Michael Jordan fans, if he was rusty in the regular season, he was no longer rusty in the playoffs.
Next.
Or he was less rusty in the playoffs.
Next.
His playoff statistics are better than the regular season.
Next.
His playoff statistics are in his range of what he usually does as a player. Next, Michael Jordan made a choice. He decided when he wanted to come back. So you can't ignore that. You can't dismiss it.
Next.
There is no fact that proves that Michael Jordan was rusty. Hey, please subscribe. And if you disagree with me on something, you can go on my program and show me your facts on whatever you disagree on. If you want to go on, let's set it up. Send me an email. The email is right there in the description section. Thank you.